I agree that Christianity is very Jewish, but what would have been considered Jewish in Jesus' day is very different from what we have today. That's why Christianity looks weird. I'm Bill Krapek, fresh and honest readings of the Bible outside of the trenches in the spirit of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. New video every morning. Now, last week, I did a video on the divine feminine in Genesis, and I determined that this divine female is one of a trio of gods. There's God, Spirit God, who is feminine, and Yahweh God. And it's Spirit God who turns on the light and is responsible for the land and the sea and is responsible for the plants. God creates everything else. Now, at Elephantine in Egypt, you have Yahu, Anat Bethel, and Hashem Bethel. Bethel is the equivalent of Yahu, so Yahu, Anat Yahu, and Hashem Yahu, etc. So if you were to talk to an Iron Age Jew about the Trinity, they would agree, although they would think this Jesus thing is kind of weird. Now, another thing comes from, which you see a lot of in Catholicism, not as much in Eastern Orthodoxy, but it's still there, is this whole thing about Mary. The Mariolatry, as we Protestants accuse them of it. And I just didn't really understand that. But now I know that that's actually very Jewish. An Iron Age Jew would consider that to be very Jewish. And let me explain. Read chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the book of 1 Kings. And then read in chapter 2 of John, the wedding at Canaan. Mary, John makes it very clear, Mary is the new Bathsheba. Bathsheba is the mother of King Solomon. Bathsheba is the Gevarah, the great lady, the mother of the king. Bathsheba, the mother of the king, is the queen, not his wife. And since Jesus is the king, Mary's the queen of heaven. John makes that clear. You could agree to that theoretically and still not accept that, except for John. John makes that pretty clear. And it's really kind of funny. It's in chapter 1 of Kings, the prophet Nathan teaches Bathsheba how to manipulate her son Solomon. And in chapter 2, I believe she's either being very naive or she's manipulating her son Solomon in chapter 2. And Mary does the same thing. Jesus says, hey, she comes to her son and she says, son, they've run out of wine. And Jesus says, my dear lady, he says, woman, it sounds rude to us, but it's actually a polite form of address. My dear lady, but not one you would say to your mother. Nevertheless, my dear lady, my time has not come. And then she goes up to everybody and she says, do what my son says. Well, he just told her no, and she went ahead and she did it anyway. I find that hilarious. Bathsheba's doing the same thing. Now, these techniques can and are used to trick you into believing in stupid things. It's basically reality management. Now, you can use reality management to get somebody to do something in their own best interest. And a good example of that is Ted Lasso. He kind of tricks people into doing the right thing. Reality management. But just be on the lookout for that when that's going on. By the way, both of these are examples of the divine feminine in Christianity. When you say that the divine feminine is lost in Christianity, what you're really saying is you don't like the way it manifests in Christianity. We're not going to go back to the days of the Middle Bronze Age with the divine the divine feminine out in the world with her boobage and her vajayjay all hanging out, airing in the wind for the whole world to see, because that's what we had at the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Bible is a reaction to that. God appears to Abraham as El Shaddai. Shaddai means God of the breast. See, this woman is supposed to be a fertility goddess, to bring fertility. Well, she didn't help Sarah and Abraham. So God steps in, Jesus, this is Jesus, pre-incarnate Jesus, steps in, and he does the job that the woman with her boobage can't do. Okay, I accept that most Jews did not accept Jesus as the Messiah. Hang on just a second. Sorry, I had to grab a book. Now, I accept that most Jews don't accept Jesus. All right, but a Jew at the time of Jesus would understand that in principle, God always selects a remnant. He selects a fragment. The rest are set aside for future rapprochement if they will have it, if they will take part in it. But it's a remnant that's chosen. Abraham and his wife Sarah are the remnant of the entire human race. in the time of the prophet Elijah in the northern kingdom of Israel, there were only 7,000 men, so including women and children, maybe 15,000 people, who still worshipped Yahweh and didn't bend the knee to Baal. Of the tribes of Israel, the only one left standing is the tribe of Judah. That's where the word Jew comes from, although it did absorb the different kinds of tribes. Benjamin, for example, was in the southern kingdom of Judah, so it also absorbed them. But basically, the only one left standing is Judah. So this is Paula Friedrichsen from Jesus to Christ. Brilliant and enjoyable, magisterial, says Geza Vermees of Times Literary Supplement. Brilliant and lucidly written, full of original and fascinating insights. Journal of American Academy of Religion, Reginald H. Fuller. So she makes a big deal out of the fact that most Jews didn't accept Jesus. She says over and over again, as if, it's one of those things where I'm not saying, I'm just saying. But I'm not saying I want to stir up any trouble. I do that all the time at work. I know that because I'm a troublemaker at work. I don't want to start any trouble. I'm just saying. She's just saying that over and over again. It's just like, listen, you're kind of missing the point of the entire Hebrew Bible. When you make that point, you don't look brilliant and enjoyable to me. You kind of get on my nerves, to be honest. Love you, babe. I mean, the woman is a brilliant scholar, so let's not go in there. So now, and on my previous video, why bother about the Bible? I often get very depressed about the fact that Christianity seems to be dying out everywhere, but I really shouldn't be, because a remnant. Most people are just going to fall away. The parable of the sower of the seed. Some seed falls on the side, and the birds get it. Shallow ground, the sun dries it up, rises among thorns, gets crowded out by the thorns, and then only some of them. So that's just the way it is. So I suppose I should pay attention. I should take my advice that I gave to the brilliant, and she is brilliant, Paula Friedrichsen, and apply it to myself. When Elijah's on the mountain, there's an earthquake and there's a fire, and God is not, and there's just a silence, and God is in the silence. I just need to trust God more. And finally, you might have heard of the Nephilim, the sons of God. It's actually sons of the gods in Genesis 6. It doesn't say so. It says sons of the gods. And in theory, you might have heard of the theory of the Nephilim and the theory that angels are demons. The reality is that they would be the old gods in disguise. Well, that's called Enochian Judaism from the book of Enoch. As far as I know, there's not even a remnant of Enochian Judaism in modern day rabbinic Judaism, although I could be wrong about that. I do not speak with authority on that. But it's alive and well in the Christianity, even though we didn't accept the book of Enoch. The Ethiopians did, but I think they're the only ones who did. But it's alive and well. For example, the story of Jesus with Legion, that's Enochian. We know who those spirits are. How do we know this? Well, ask yourself a question. Where does that happen? Ask yourself a question. Who was living there at the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and at the time, even down to the days of Moses? Who was living there? The answer to the question is, and you're thinking that they're possessed by demons. Well, if your definition of demon is a fallen angel, then no, that's not what they are. Okay? Enochian Judaism is still Judaism. Okay? Now, pencil that in, because I'm going to be getting into that in episode 11 on Wednesday. Yeah, I'm reading my script. Now, the point here, that Christianity is very Jewish and would make a lot of sense in Iron Age Israel, but doesn't make a lot of sense with Rabbinic Judaism and Islam today. Now you know why. Tomorrow, let's look at tomorrow. The Bible was edited. The Bible's been edited. I can show you the seams. I can show you spots where it's happened. Don't worry, that's not the scary part. That's the fun part. Iron sharpens iron. I'll see you then.